Islam family, first and foremost, I rise giving the highest of praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the master of all, the Lord of all the realms, Father of the universe. I give the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali, a prophet that was sent to us, an angel that was sent to man to redeem his people from their sinful ways. I give honors to the forerunner, the harbinger, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who did warn and historic the nations. I'd like to give honors to the Moorish American standard, the red flag with the green five-pointed star representing the highest principles that are known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I also would like to acknowledge the United Mercantile Trading Banner, also known as the American flag. I give honors to all Moorish Americans, both past, present, future, regardless of grand body, who strive to promote this divine and national movement by way of the Prophet's holy instructions and divine laws. I give honors to the office of the Grand Governor, the Lieutenant Grand Governor, the Chief Staff, the Admin Staff, the mighty vanguards to keep the peace. Last but certainly, I give honors to you, the Ills and Bays in the sacred grove, because when man honors man, he honors that Father God, Allah. Islam, all praises are due to Allah for having us here on another holy day evening so that we may continue to build on things that make us better citizens. Islam. So to raise up the ethers, I would like for everyone to turn to chapter 10, your Moorish Holy Qurans. And I'm here Islam when everybody gets to chapter 10. And we are going to build on verse 24 and 25. And it reads, well, actually 24, 25, and 26. And it reads, and this is Allah. You are, each one, a priest just for yourself. And sacrifice of blood Allah does not want. Just give your life and sacrificial service to all of life, and Allah is pleased. And when Jesus had said thus, he had stood aside, and the people were amazed, but strove among themselves. Islam family? If I may, I would like to paraphrase another verse found in chapter 17 of the Moorish Holy Quran. And it reads, or it says rather, that when the will of man and the will of Allah are one, resurrection is a fact. So the question is, how does the will of man and the will of Allah, how are they synchronized? How is it to be one? And thus, as I just said, the key is the sacrifice. The Prophet says in the divine warning that you will sacrifice your very life for the love of this movement, for your Prophet and the love of this movement. Islam family? So the question that I ask today, that I want for all of you to ponder, is are you willing to make your life a willing sacrifice to Allah? Are you willing to raise yourself up to the will of Allah so that you can witness and observe the act of resurrection. And when I talk about your life as a willing sacrifice, I'm not talking about an immediate death, if you will, or a literal death. Though it's said in certain circles that it may come a time where you will be asked of your allegiance, whether it's to Allah or is it to man. And if you choose Allah, if you choose the great God, you may very well perish. But I'm not talking about that degree of sacrifice. I'm talking about the degree of sacrifice of your life that you are willing to yield and submit to Allah's will. Are you willing to be a friend and a servant of humanity? Are you willing for your hearts to be a living altar? These things I ask you because these things are important to us as Muslims and as of children of God. Because if we do not understand the art and the science of the sacrifice, then all is for naught. See, we talk about, all of us know the famous story of Ibrahim or Abraham being commanded by the great God Allah to sacrifice his son, his first son. And, you know, in the Piscean text, it mentions that it was Isaac. And in the Quran of Mecca, it mentions it's Ishmael. But we're not going to debate over which son it was. The importance is the principle of what's in the story. And the story is that Allah gave Abraham a test because Allah needed to know what was the degree of his sacrifice. Was he willing to sacrifice that which he loved more than himself, which was his son? We know that Allah and Abraham had a close relationship, and we know that during the time where he desired to have a child, he went through trials and tribulations, to say the least. But eventually he was blessed with a son, and he loved that son. And again, I can't express that he loved it more. He loved his son more than he loved himself. And it says in the scriptures, who are you to call yourself of the faithful, of the mu'minun, and not be tested? So Allah, knowing that Ibrahim was a master, gave him a test. And the test was, are you willing to sacrifice the thing or the person in which you love the most for Allah? And Ibrahim's answer was without a doubt. I may not understand it, but I hear and I obey. Islam? So we know, as the story goes, is that when he was just about to strike his son, that Allah sent in place of a son a lamb. And he said to Allah, or Allah said to Ibrahim, that I needed to know without a shadow of a doubt that you're willing to sacrifice the very thing that you love for my honor, to do my will. So again, we as Muslims, we as Muslims, we being a spiritual people, as some may say, how in tune are we with the Most High? How in tune are we with the Creator? Because if we are such in tune with the Creator as we claim to be, then it is nothing to do His will. It is nothing to put your life on the line to be the thought of Allah made manifest. to be the message that you bring. And if you are not willing to demonstrate that measure or that degree, truth be told, you're exercising a degree of shirk. Why do I say that? I know that may be harsh. But the thing is that in the scriptures, you are not to have any God before the great God Allah. Our shahada, our proclamation to becoming Muslims is La ilaha illallah. There is no deity but the deity. And we call that deity Allah. So when you're not able to do the will of Allah, but you're willing to do the will of man, willing to do the will of man for the sake of finance, for the sake of pride, for the sake of fame, then you are putting something before Allah. So we're not talking about different aspects of Allah, a conversation that myself and a brother of our membership has discussed before. We're not talking about giving honors or giving the praise to Brahman or to Thoth or to any other name that you wish to call Allah. We're talking about debasing yourself, the very thing that put us in this predicament to begin with. See, when are we going to learn that when you remove yourself from the will of Allah, the fate for you is something that we cannot handle? We consider ourselves to be a strong people, but the wrath of Allah is imminent. And so when you take the steps to remove yourself from Allah, to debase yourself from Allah, you are committing shirk, because you're binding the partners, whether it's your own pride, whether it's your thought, whether you think you're smarter than Allah. That is a form of shirk. Because who are you to think that you're smarter than the great God Allah? We also know Allah as Al-Alim. Allahu Alam. He is the all-knowing. So for us to think that we are smarter than Allah and think that we're smarter than Allah's prophet, that is an exercise in folly. So when we think about this idea of sacrifice, yeah, we can sacrifice our finance. But when is it that we begin to not just sacrifice our finance, but begin to sacrifice our time? To sacrifice the doing the work of Allah versus the things that we cherish. Going out on a Friday night. Hanging out with your brothers or your sisters at the club or at the basketball game, at the football game, or at the movie theater. When are we going to take the time and say, no, we need to be in the house of Allah so we can hear the word and go back and teach the people? Because if we're not thinking of those concepts, then we're on the path of removing ourselves from Allah. Ultimately, because we're going to keep going farther and farther and farther away into the cares of the world to where we're going to be in deep water. And if you don't know how to swim within those depths, you will drown. Thus, you have that measure and that degree of Allah, the love of Allah, the Spirit of Allah, the angel coming to rescue us, to rescue humanity from the cares of the world from which we have drowned, because we do not properly know how to navigate those shores. We don't know how to swim. We don't know how to go into the lowest of the depths, so we can reach our brothers and our sisters and bring them up and raise them up and bring them back to the shores of salvation. When will the will of man and Allah be at one, so we can witness the resurrection, so we can observe the resurrection. This is what Allah, or this is what the Prophet of Allah, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, had mentioned to us when he said that, when he mentioned that destination which is not uncertain or unknown, Islam. These are the things that we have to think about when Friday, our holy day, comes, or when it comes a time for us to do community outreach, for us to do an uplifting act, or to perform an uplifting act, rather. Where is our minds and our hearts? You know, are we willing to sacrifice our slumber? I get it. We work very hard Monday through Friday. You know, inshallah, we are toiling with a smile on our face. We're being optimistic, and we're also being in thought. But when that time comes for us to perform the will of Allah, we should be front and center. This day, this holy day, this is the great meeting. But you know what else is also the great meeting? Anytime we as Moorish Americans gather to perform an uplifting act. So if that is considered a meeting, then we are obligated by a divine constitution and bylaws to uphold the laws of our Prophet. And that is to attend our meetings promptly, the best way that we can. Those that practice the Salah, one of the most difficult things as those that practice the degree of Muhammad is waking up during Fajr, early in the morning, and prostrating, getting your mind, getting your thoughts and your spirit aligned so you can talk to Allah, so that you can speak to Allah. That's the most difficult thing for all Muslims within the Ummah, to wake up 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, and say Allahu Akbar. How quickly do we forget that it was Allah that enabled us to lay our heads down to rest so that we may slumber? How quickly do we forget it is by the will and mercy of Allah that we are able to rise again each and every morning. And all Allah asks for us to do is to sacrifice 2 to 3 minutes of your time, maybe 5 minutes to perform the wudu. But to wake up in the morning, in the middle of your slumber, and to say Allahu Akbar. So when we talk about just that minor degree of submission, we fall short. So if we're not able to do that, then when will we be able to stand firm when it is called for us to do greater things? Islam, family? So, I digress. In the Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, it says, when the will of man and Allah is one, resurrection is a fact. It is our duty as Moorish Americans to be missionaries and promote the religion of Ali on the shores of America. And for us to do that, not only do we need to be studious in our doctrine, but we have to continue and strive to practice the art of sacrifice. If we should know that the pinnacle of wisdom is the preservation of life. And if we are familiar with life, or the preservation of life being that pinnacle of wisdom, then we have to, or we should continue to rather, build upon that foundation and sacrifice even more than we are called to do, so that others can be in the same position that we are. Islam family? Our prophet tells us in the creation and fall of man that victory is sure because Allah leads on. What's interesting about that is for there to be a leader, you must have followers. So the question is, are we willing to follow Allah by way of our prophet to this destiny which is not uncertain or unknown? Because, you know, we talk about our prophets as if at one point during their journey they weren't followers. We have this perception that in the conscious community that we want to be, well, let's not even do that. In the Moorish American community, we have guiders of the nation. But in order for our members and our children to be guiders of the nation, they must first be followers of this impregnable doctrine. They must be followers of the will of Allah, the love of Allah made manifest. Our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, Islam, to be guiders, to be leaders one day. We have to understand that you must learn how to follow. How many of us are willing to follow? That goes back into the initial conversation that I had with you all. When the will of man and the will of Allah is one, resurrection is a fact. So that in mind, we have to yield and submit to the will of Allah. That means that we have to follow. We have to hear. So that means we have to be quiet, which to some of us may be a little difficult. And we have to obey. We talk about meditation. Oh, I've mastered meditation. I know how to meditate. Did we meditate today? I think you need to meditate. It works for me. Does it work for you? Does it work for you when it comes down to the comes down and you have someone that is a reflection of you, I might add, that gets on your everlasting nerves? Do you have the ability to call on the holy breath and breathe and reflect and meditate? Because that's when it counts. It doesn't count when you're at home and you got the Nakshampra incense burning and you got the jazz playing and the cultural music playing and you got your prayer rug out and you got your dhikr beads and your namaste going. We can do that all day. The work comes in when you're able to do it against all this noise. When you hear the cares of the world crashing against your ear. Are you able to listen? Are you able to hear the words of Allah and obey and submit to His will? That's why we're here in the Moorish Science Temple of America as members. Because we're here to establish and continue to build on things that make us better citizens. And with us being better citizens, that means we have an obligation to uphold. We have to be loyal to our leaders that we appoint as citizens. We have to be upholding to the leaders that Allah that has appointed within this government of the Moorish Science Temple of America.
That's right.
Because when you show yourself to be loyal, that's when you learn and earn that degree of being a qualified leader. When you're able to be what you know. Because word is going to come down the pipeline. If you're not able to execute it, then who knows what may be at stake. Are you willing to follow? Islam family?
Islam.